Right guys, I've just got to the part now where I've made the body slightly bigger than I did have. So I've stopped there where I've told you about the width of the arm. So I didn't want that to go any more, but I wanted the body to grow a little bit. So the part where I was stopping with the arm was here, the last fluffy bit. And I stopped on that stone colour, which was this one. Stop, that was the last round of growing that part of the arm. Now I've carried on because I wanted the body section to be bigger. So this is the body section here, all the way around. So to do that, I've started here with a chain 3. So that was the last round up here. And I've just followed that around. So that was the last. You can't see that there because of the fluffy stuff. Okay, so that was my last row of the stone. So there is the first chain 3. So I've chained 3 up and then I've done another 2 double crochets. So there's your cluster of 3 to begin with, then over to the next space and the next and the next, and I've just carried on round. But I've just remembered that whatever you start with at the beginning, so here I've started with 3 double crochet, then make sure then that you end with 3 double crochet. Then you will chain 3, turn your work, and you'll come straight over to the second space, and that then leaves your gap for your next layer, your next row, which will then be a chain 3 double and do 3 double crochets in. So I hope that makes sense. So if I just show you on this one here, because I'm still working this right now. So this is upside down, but I'd have your first chain 3 here, then turn your work and you're straight over to that one. Okay, but because you've done that and you're finishing that same way with that chain 1 there, you'll have a space there. So on your next row you then put 3 double crochet in, and then the next row it will be a chain 3, turn your work and over to the next one, which will be here. So when it comes to this row after the stone colour, it will be a chain 3 and turn. So then you don't work anything else, you just go over to the next one and put 3 double crochets, and then when you end on that next row it will just be a chain 3 and turn. So it just alternates the work. If you look all the way along, in every row that you've done, you've got a chain 3 and turn your work, then you've got 3 double crochet, then you've got a chain 3 and a space, then you've got 3 double crochet, then you've got a chain 3 and you've got another space, and it just alternates. So if you get stuck with anything, just look back at what you've already worked and it'll all start to make sense. Sometimes it can sound like you're overcomplicating things, but at the end of the day, this is a granny stitch pattern. It's just that because you're changing colours and you're doing it in a certain amount of rows, it just makes it look a little bit more intricate than what it actually is. So make sure you've got everything together again, all your yarns, your crochet hook and what have you, and I will carry on with this. I've already started with that last stone colour. So again, like on this side, we've got your stone, then you do your fluff, and then you do your stone again, and that is where I'm going to end. So I'm going to want, after this round, it'll be the fluffy row and then another row of this colour, and that is where I'm going to stop. And on the other side, all I need to do now is one more round of the stone colour, and then that will be finished, and then we'll continue on and I'll explain what we do with the back. But it's relatively simple when it comes to the back. You basically have your right and your left side. Choose which one you want to be which. Lay them down flat like that. If you wish, put 2 stitch markers on whichever side you've chosen as your back pieces. So like I would put a stitch marker in there and I would put one in there, so I know that when I put them both flat, that is one side and that is the other. And then what I do then with that section in the back to make room for the neck and shoulders, I just do 2 rows on each side. Keep it nice and simple and make sure they match. As long as they match, you'll get a nice seamless sew right up the centre. And then we'll then be going on to the arms, the length and the hood, and the final will be the edging. But this is going to be split into several episodes. So for now, get all your bits together and we'll finish off this round, get a fluffy round in, finish them off, and then we will go up the middle. and we'll take it from there. So go and get everything together. So I just wanted to add that by the time we've finished doing the amount of rows that I plan to do, which will take us after this one, the fluffy one, and then one more in this colour, in total that will be 25 rounds for me. Now this is slightly oversized. I'm about a size 14, 12 to 14 top, but I sort of take these so that they will probably fit up to a size 16 and 18 possibly, but like I said, I like them to be more of a coat size so that they can go over, say, a lightweight sweater underneath, if that's the sort of thing that you like. So if you want to do it smaller, then do less rows, so just miss out a couple and you can end it where you wish to, depending on what yarn you're using as well. But I just thought I'd put in there that for me this is 25 rows. I'm using a 4.5mm hook. Now I started this round, obviously on this side, with a cluster of 3. That was where I began here, and then we've worked all the way down to the bottom and we've come back up the bottom, and this is the back side. So I'm just going to carry on. Obviously I've worked a little bit of this off camera because working it on camera would take hours and hours of making, so I've just carried on and then just wanted to cut back in when I was a bit further along and left it at that stage. So like I said, I've grown on both sides for me just a little bit to get going. I would imagine that anybody really starting a hexie has got some experience with crochet, and this is just a double crochet in American terminology, like I covered at the beginning of the video. You'll notice I don't chain in between any of these clusters. The only points that I put one chain in between is in those corners, and when you're doing this, those corners are at the bottom left and the bottom right. Those are your 2 corners that you've still got to work as usual. So all I'm doing is just carrying on until I get to that top section of 3 double crochets. I'm coming up to the end there, so just keep going. If you do decide to have a go at this cardigan and you choose any of the colours that I've used or whatever colours you decide, I would so appreciate to hear back your feedback. So you can find me either on Instagram at Crochet with Love 101. You can find me on my Facebook page, which is Crochet Cardigans, Crochet Hexagon Cardigans, sorry. I also run a group called Keeping It Hexy, or you can just pop a comment below, but I would really love some of your feedback on your finished cardigans. It's always good to see that you are actually helping anybody out there. Okay, so I'm coming up to that very last stitch there, which from the previous row was a chain 3 here, which means I'm going to end on my 3 double crochet. But watch what I do here. So I've got 1 double crochet, 2 double crochet, oh, don't want that in there, Okay, so there's 2, but to keep it an even line there, I don't actually put it into the space, I put it into that stitch below. So although it's not something you would typically do, it just, for me, makes it a little bit easier to keep that edge nice and straight. So it, in the end, it does actually just look like a cluster of 3. So that is my last row for now on there, so with that colour. So I'm going to tie off and snip that off. Okay, we're just going to snip that last piece off there. Pull that through and just give it a bit of a tug to make sure that's nice and tight. So now we're going to get rid of this yarn and bring over the fluffy stuff. This one. I love this yarn, it's so nice. I know it's slippery and it can sometimes feel like a bit of a pain to work with, but it's only until you get used to it, and then it's really nice. So we've just finished there, so I will now begin on this side. I'm going to start here, so I will show you how I begin that. So we'll pull the yarn through. Like I said, I do join and finish a little bit different to other people, but it's just what works for me. It doesn't always have to be what works for you. You can do you, I'll do me. So I just pull that through. Inches. And then all I do is make sure I've got a nice and long enough strand that I can flip it through my work later on, knot it and cut it so it's invisible to anybody looking. So I'll give that a nice tug. Now, one of the reasons I do sort of go a little bit over the top with this for tugging it and making sure it's in the right place is basically because it is slippy. It can unravel itself if you put it in a knot. So just make sure that if you do put it in any sort of a knot, that it's nice and tight, and then your work won't undo at a later stage. So let's begin. Okay, so this is where we are. I'm going to go into that same stitch that I've just knotted through, and I'm going to pull up a chain, 1, 2 and 3. Okay, so that's your first chain 3. You're then going to come straight over here and do 3 double crochets. Okay, now a lot of it is not visual sometimes with this, it's feel. So if you feel like you've got a nice clean stitch, then that's great. If you've not, sometimes you might just need to drop it and pick it back up again, because it's so difficult to see each and every stitch that you put through. And bear in mind, once it's all nice and fluffy, even if your stitches are a little bit untidy, you'll get away with it with this yarn. I mean, obviously you still want your stitches to be as nice and tidy as you can, but you know, don't over stress and overwork it when you don't need to do. You're just pulling it through 2, through 2 more, and again pull it through 2, through 2 more, and 1 more, 1 and 2. I mean, you don't want to end as such on a row with this. So obviously if I was just finishing now off with this one, I would then have to join to the other side with this, and that is not something that you want to do. You know, when you do your 2 extra chains for your shoulders and your neck, obviously you don't want to end on that, because trying to sew through that could be incredibly difficult, time consuming, and you still might not get the result that you want. So I wouldn't necessarily use that on an end row. I'd work it somehow so that it ends on a different colour, and I like to try and keep my colours the same when I'm attaching anyway, just to try and keep your stitches a little bit neater and cleaner. So keep working that now until you get down to the bottom, which will be your corner, and I'll meet you at that corner. So just keep going, working it through, take your time, there's no rush. If I'm a little bit ahead of you, then by all means hit that pause button for a few minutes and catch up. Okay, work that till you get down to that first corner at the bottom and I'll meet you there. So I'm coming on to the end of that first row there, or should I say the first corner. It's not the end, it's the corner. So work 3 double crochet into that one. Now, apologies if you see any mishaps in any of the videos. Sometimes I'll miss a stitch, sometimes I'll say the wrong word. We're only human, aren't we? So bear with me. Right, so we've started at the top here and we've worked our way down that first row there. So now we've come to our first corner. Remember I said there's two, one at one side of your hip, shall we say, and one at the other. So again, we're just working a normal corner in there. So where in every other one it's a 3, this will be a 3, chain 1 and a 3. Now I will also add, if you're not as familiar with this fluffy yarn as I've become with working it over the last few projects, it can sometimes be beneficial, and it's the only time I do it, to chain 2, just so that you can feel where that gap is when you come on to your next round. You can get into it easy enough without it being tight and trapping some of that nice fluffy yarn at the back rather than at the front where you want it. So for this purpose I'll chain 2 with you. So I've done 1, we'll do 2. So just remember that when you come to your next corner you'll be doing 3 double crochet, chain 2 and 3 double crochet back into the same space. Like I say, it does just make it a little bit easier. And on the last project that I did as the hexa, which was the red one, I did do that then because I wasn't as familiar with working with it. But yeah, it just gives you that little bit of ease so that you can see and feel where your work is properly. So we've done that, so now we're just working along the bottom row. So when you get to the end of this, you'll have another corner to work and you'll do it exactly how you've just done that. Now, if you've worked your cardigan in the same way as I have, you'll finish on that stone row after this fluffy row. Now, if you look back at the rows that you've worked, you'll do, if you was working this cardigan to go even bigger, you would be working then another 4 rows of the multicoloured yarn, which is the base of the cardigan. So if you think about it now, you want 2 rows on one side for that back space and 2 rows on the other. So if you do it with this, then it then makes up the pattern that you've been using in your cardigan, doesn't it? So worked out perfectly for me. So that is what we'll be doing for those back rows. It'll be 2 rows on one side, 2 rows on another, and that just gives us enough room for our neck and shoulders. Now, if you go too big with that back area, with those few extra rows, now I've seen it where some people will put crochet squares in or even tapestry, and it looks brilliant. But occasionally you see that one person that has got a lovely cardigan, but it's sticking out at the back, at the lower back section. And most of the time, the reason for that is that you've put too many rows in at the back. So you're not as big at your bottom back as you are to your shoulder width. So although it may fit beautifully around the shoulders, it's kicking out at the top of the bum area. And like I said, most of the reason for that is because you've done too many rows. You've made it too large at the back. Now you can often bring it in by putting an edging on. Now I personally have never had that issue, and the only reason I can see that that is the case for me is that I just do those 2 rows, and I always have. Even in the first one, I only did 2 rows on one side, 2 rows on another. Now if the yarn was thick and chunky, I would probably only do 1 row on either side. I'd do less rather than more, because what you've got to remember with these cardigans, some of them can be pretty weighty, and the weight alone will drag it around the shoulder. You'll have plenty of room for it. Now, the main reason I do like to have that space at the back is because oftentimes I like the cardigan with a hood on. So by doing that, it gives me a little bit of room to make the hood. But if you're not all that fussed about a hood, then you don't even need to worry about it. Just do your 2 rows and it'll be fine. It'll sit nicely. And if you want to put an edging on, you can. If you don't, just finish it off with a nice row. It's entirely up to you. That's the beauty of these cardigans. A lot of it is down to very personal preference. Some will crochet with 3 in between. Somebody will crochet with a chain between all of these. I never have. I've always done it in pretty much the same way, just with different techniques, that's all. And the main things that makes this cardigan lovely, as well as the red one that I did, is just this yarn. It gives it a really nice finish, and it just gives it that lovely texture, so it stands out. I mean, I've only worn it once because it's been quite warm since I've made it, and I had people stopping and saying, "Oh, I love that jacket. Where did you get that from?" So you can take pride in that, can't we, guys? And if you follow what I'm saying, then there's no reason why you can't have that jacket too. I mean, I do love how versatile the hexagon is. I mean, when I very first started seeing hexagons, I weren't all that keen on them, to be fair. And it was just because I'm not much for the stripy type. I like it where colours blend and flow. So to have a cardigan that may be pink on one row and then a luminous green on the next just doesn't strike my fancy. However, it still looks fabulous. It's just not my thing. But then once I did that first one that was red, and it was a different changing coloured yarn, it just really took off, and from then on I've loved them. So even if you think a hexit isn't strictly your thing, give it a go, but do it your way, your colours, and I think you find that it'll stick and you'll want to make another one. It's a bit of an addiction once you start, because you're making a really standout piece, but it's not really all that difficult to do. Okay, so once you get to that corner, remember guys, 3 double crochet, chain 2, 3 double crochet into that same space, and that will bring you back around to then working along the next edge, which will be your front or your back, whichever side you're working on right now. So keep going with that. Sorry, I've just dropped that. Keep going with that, and I will meet you back at the end of this row all together, and we'll work that last bit together. So we are coming up to that end section now. So I've done that second corner, so this is now at the back of the cardigan, where we're just doing those last few stitches. Now what you need to remember now is how you began this side. So did you start on a 3 double crochet and then over to the next, or did you start on a chain 3 and then over to the next stitch? So just have a look at yours and double check, so that you know whichever stitch you started on will be the one that you'll finish on. Now I know for me it was a chain 3 and over to the next stitch, the next space. So that's how I'll be ending it, on a 1 double crochet, which is the same as a chain 3 on the other side where I started. So 3 double crochet in this one, so now we're here. So I will just be putting 1 single crochet into the top of that stitch there. So yarn over into that stitch, pick up a loop, pull it through, bring that underneath, through 2, oh no, she's dropped it. Let's try again. That's what you get for trying to do it on camera. Right, so back into there, pick up your stitch, through 2 and through 2, and then I'm just going to pull through 1 more to tie off. Now make sure, if you're doing it like I did, you pull through quite a little bit there, because, like I said, this yarn is extremely silky soft. So all I do is make sure that I've got a little bit of a tail, pull that nice and tight, but then to just make sure it's sealed in there, I just pull it through once or twice and just put an extra knot on. It's just for peace of mind really, because I like to think that I've got the extra stitch going. So I just pull it through, she says, and just put that extra little bit of knot on just to tighten it, and then we can just chop that off later on. Right, so get your other yarn together now, your other colour, and we'll switch over to that one. Okay, so I've cut that off, I've weaved it in a little bit, and I've just attached the last row that I'm going to do in the stone colour. Now we ended on 1 double crochet last time, which means that we're then going to do 3 double crochet into that space. Just underneath there, pull it through 2, through 2, and again 2 and through 2. So when you get to the opposite side, you'll end on that as well. Okay, so then over here, like I said, with this you're feeling it rather than seeing the gap. So we want to be going through that space there. So I always try and do this a little bit loosely, just so that you can go around later on and spruce up that fluffy little bit. It's just that it's inevitable that it's going to get trapped into these stitches, and it just works out nicely that as you go later on you can just fluff it through. I did show you earlier on the video, but it's just a way of bringing all that nice fluffiness to the side you want everybody to see, and not so much on the inside where it doesn't really matter. So over to the next, which is here. And like I said, this is the last round of the body like this. We'll then be working onto the back piece, which will be 2 rows of the multicoloured yarn on both sides of the back. Excuse me, I've just done a chain there. There you go. So I'm sure most of you have got the hang of it now, but we'll just be doing this one all the way around, no stitches in between apart from the bottom left and the bottom right. If there's anything I've done and you've not quite understood, by all means reach out to me and I'll do my best to help you through. And while you're there, would you mind just hitting that like button? Just because I am just a lady that likes to crochet. This is not a paid tutorial. All the yarns I've purchased myself, and I'm doing this just to share my work with others. I basically just started doing this because every time I uploaded something on Facebook I would get thousands of message requests asking for the pattern. So last time I thought, right, well, I can't give it you because it's in my head, so I will do it in a tutorial and hopefully you can follow along. And I think it took me roughly about 40 hours to put it all together, to edit it properly, to upload it. Like I say, as a first timer, it took me a while to upload it just onto YouTube. So yeah, the like button, I would really appreciate it. Okay, so I just want you to keep on going with this. Remember that when you get to them corner sections, you're going back to your 3 double crochet, chain 1, 3 double crochet. And if you can't see where that chain 2 is, chain 2 space from the last round, then pop your finger in there and see if you can feel it rather than see it. Because I know when you are new at this, it's not always easy to see where you're supposed to be going. I've got some of this fluffy yarn in black, but I'm not quite decided yet on what to make with it. So if you've got any ideas of something that you'd like me to make and share with you, then fire them below and let's have a look and see what you can come up with. And I've not got anything planned after this one. And I hate it when you get into that stage where you've not seen anything else that you want to make, and you know that when you finish this you're going to be scratching your head thinking, what am I going to do next? I'm not one for making teddies or toys, just so you know. Okay, so just keep going with that, guys, and I'll meet you back at the end. So I've just come up to that end now, and if you look at what we did on the other side, which is here, okay, we have begun with a cluster of 3, so that is exactly how we want to end on a cluster of 3. So let's just find that space there, and there it is. So put your 3 double crochets into there, and like I said to you before, I try to go into a stitch to finish, so that is what I've managed to do there. So pull that through and cut it. So you may well have your own ways of beginning and starting with a new yarn. This is just how I've always done it, and it's just my preferred method. But like I said, you do you. It's entirely up to you. So that is now that one side and the body complete. So what I'll do is I've got a stitch marker there, and I will put that here so that I know that this side is going to be the back. So I'm just going to pop that there. Now the other side needs doing with this, so I'll do that off camera. So now what we're going to do, because this is now complete and I want to do that section at the back panel, should we say, that's what most people call it. So I'm just going to basically do 1 row up, turn your work, and 1 row back down, and that is it then for that back section. I'll then build up the other side because I need to do this part yet on the other, and then I will do exactly the same with this yarn, up, turn your work, and back down, and that is the back panel done. It'll be ready then for joining on that panel, and it'll match properly because obviously you're using the same yarn, so you couldn't ask for better really with the way that's going to work out. So just get everything together again, get your yarn and attach it onto here, and you will begin with a chain of 3, and then you'll go over to that next chain space, because obviously you've got a cluster here already. So if you turn it that way you can see a little bit better. So yeah, so you've got a cluster there already, so we want the chain 3 to count as that double crochet, and then straight over to this and continue on as you do. And then once we get to that bottom section, which is here, because you've started with just a chain 3, I want you to just put a chain 3 in there, attach it here in the end, okay, and then turn your work and you'll be going into the spaces. So chain 3 over to the next chain space and work as you go. So yeah, so you'll be chain 3 there to count as that double crochet like you're going to do at the beginning, and then over to the next stitch here, and that'll be how you'll work your way back up. So yeah, that's it. It's simple really. But anyway, go and get your bits together and I'll cast on and I'll meet you back when I've done that. Okay, so I've now attached that yarn by just knotting it through. So now you need to pull that yarn through and chain 3. 1, 2 and 3. Now because you're working with the cluster directly below, you'll be going over to that next stitch, yarn over through that space, pull up a loop and 1 double crochet there. don't worry that you think that's going to pull that way, because when you come back round, you'll be going into that, so you won't notice. So see, some people would chain 4 there, but I never do because I don't chain between my clusters. So now do 2 more double crochet. Okay, I've just pulled that end through a little bit there. Okay, straight over to the next one. We're just going to continue doing this all the way down that row until you get to that bottom section, which would count as your corner, but we're not doing it as a corner now because we're going to turn. Okay, just keep doing that till you get to that bottom section. This yarn is lovely to work with. I'm really into yarn art at the minute. I've been using a few different selections of their yarn, and it's just lovely. And for one of the last projects I did, I used a yarn that was similar in texture to this, but now after using this, it's just on a different level compared to the other one. So apologies if I've gone a little bit fast for you, but if I have, then just hit that pause button till you catch up. Right, so remembering that we started with that double crochet, so I'm now going to do double crochet through there. And like I said, don't worry about the fact that it looks like it's going to drag over, because it will right itself once you get going with your work. So chain one and turn your work. Right, and then I'll show you what I do with this. Okay, so I've chained one just to turn. Okay, but put 2 more chains in there, because that'll count as your first double crochet, and then you're going to double crochet through here twice more. 1 and 2. Now what you've got to remember as well, although this may seem like a bigger space now, but what you've got to remember is that we're going to be building on this. Once the cardigan's attached, you're going to be adding length, which is this bottom section here. So this will actually start to work its way into there. So don't worry too much if you've got a little bit of a gap there, because it will begin to right itself. So again, we're not going to chain, we're just going to go straight over to the next chain space, and you'll do your 3 double crochets in there. You see, you've just got a little bit of a space because you've been working into a corner, that's all. And now you're not, we're converting. Okay, and back over there. And just carry on until you're at the top again, and I shall meet you back there. Okay, so we're coming up to that end piece now, and then stitches. Now we're at that last space now, and if you remember at the beginning we started with 3 double crochets at the other end, so we're going to put in 3 double crochets there. And like I said, I like to go into the stitch just to keep it as straight edged as I can. Put them through, pull through and tie off. So there is the 2 stitches done for the back on that one piece. So I still need to continue that with the other, but I will just show you now. If I lay this somewhat flat, excuse me, you can see now where it's starting to work for this edge. So if I just pull this over, okay, so you've now got this extra, that. So when it comes to sewing, I will sew this edge together with the other one. But the way I do that is by turning the work inside out, so that these two sides come together like this, and I then sew them together like that from one side to the next. But we'll do that with you once we've got this side exactly the same as the other, matched up, and we've pinned it all together, so we know we're going to get that lovely straight edge. But like I said, we still need to do some work on that side. Now when it comes to sewing up the shoulders, although I've got them pinned here, what I do is I know that I've done those 2 extra rows, okay? So I line this up, I do it inside out so that any stitching is on the inside and doesn't show on the outside of the work. But yeah, so I will pin that there, and that is where I will stitch it to, all the way along the arm. But I'll be doing it inside out so that it's not on the right side of the work. So then once that's done, this will be the only section that is not stitched in. But then once you've got the other side there as well, you've then got this to play with. So that's then when I start marking off for where I want the hood to begin, and it'll then go all the way around, plus the 4 stitches there, and then all the way back down the other side. But we'll get into that as the time goes on. For now, I need you to catch up with where I'm up to. I need to catch up on that other side. So finish off those rows, add the 2 for the neck and shoulder area. Don't go crazy and add too many rows. If you don't want to add just 2, then that is entirely up to you. Again, it's very much personal preference, and it's down to whatever size that you are working to. But yeah, I just do 2, and that is enough for me. And with the weight of the cardigan, it tends to pull it down a little bit as well. But yeah, so once we've got that done, we will then attach it together. We'll do that on camera so that you can see how I attach it. And then we will then go on to add a little more of the body. Because once it's sewn together, you can then sew around the entire thing, and it all starts to come together as one piece then, rather than 2 halves. So yeah, so once the length has come down just a few rows, it doesn't have to be anything crazy. Again, depending on personal preference, I will probably do maybe three more rows onto this, because I like to do a little bit of an edging as well. But I'll see, because once it's together, I'll want to continue on a little bit with that pattern. I don't want to then start doing something different down here when I've kept to that 4-1-1-1-4 pattern, and it's working out quite nicely that right now. So I don't want to break off from that. So we'll see how it works out for the bottom from where we are now, because that would then go on to be, let's see, it would then be another 4 rows of this colour, and then it would change to the fluffy colour and the teal colour. So we'll see. I might be able to drop it to 3 rows of that multicolour, but like I said, I'll see once it's on, because I might just get away with just carrying on as is. But we will see when we get to that point, and we'll make a decision on that. So yeah, so the next time I check in, we will have this opposite side exactly the same. We'll have that stone colour lastly onto that edge like this, and we'll have done the 2 sections there. So by the time we've done that, we will then get into attaching the piece together and bringing it all together as one item of clothing. So carry on with that for now, and I will check in when I've got the other side exactly the same as the side we've just been working on. Right guys, here's the hexagon cardigan so far. So I've got both sides exactly the same size, and I've now done the 2 rows on either side of the back panel. So what we need to do now is attach those 2 rows together, which will then make our cardigan into one piece. And then what we'll do, once we've done this section, we will then go across and attach at the top there. So I do this with a large darning needle, which will fit my thread through quite nicely, and a pair of scissors and some stitch markers. Or if you've got them to hand, any of these little clips here that we use. Now remember to get your work and turn it inside out. So this is the inside of my cardigan. I've already gone ahead and popped it inside out, and you can tell because here are the pieces of where we began with that tail for the starting ring. So go and get everything together that you need, and we'll begin attaching our cardigan. So I've gone ahead and popped these clips on along that back seam. So this is the part that will sit right at the middle of your back. Okay, so I've lined it up nicely to make sure that both pieces fit nicely together. And I'm now going to go ahead and attach my needle here to feed it through. So I'll just grab my needle. Excuse me, got a little bit of a frog in my throat there. Okay, now I don't do this anything special, so if you have your own way of sewing garments together, then by all means go ahead and do it, whatever suits you best. I mean, to be fair, threading work together like this is the least favourite part for me. I hate sewing. So I mean, I don't mind doing it on a tapestry type sewing. I just hate sewing garments together. So just a tad awkward. So just make sure that that yarn is secure on there nice and tightly. You don't want it to start unraveling as your work gets bigger and as you start attaching everything else together, do you? So let's go ahead. Don't worry about these parts too much now, because don't forget at the bottom there we are going to start adding length. So we'll then start to disguise any loose threads or pieces that are left over from any previous rounds. So you want to just try and keep this nice and neat, because when you get to the other end you don't want to be sort of half a centimetre longer or shorter, should we say, when you get to that end. So you want to keep it nice and together, making sure that your parts meet up nicely, your stitches meet nicely. So I've gone through one and then come back, and I always try to kind of bring one piece through and then I will come back on it. So like there now, I've just come through that part there and I will go back through that. And I tend to do that throughout the whole thing. I'll go through a little bit and then I will go back. And it's just a way for me to be sure that nothing will unravel at a later date, that's all. Like I said, nothing special, just in and out. Like I said, I'm not taking too much notice of those sections just yet. And I can guarantee that as long as you keep it all nice and neatly coming through, that once you turn it to the right side, you won't see a single stitch. It's just a matter of taking a few minutes to do it properly. At this stage, you really don't want to start rushing. As much as you may hate sewing like me, you don't want to be rushing your work. And like I say, it's no special method, just in and out as we go. And this is the exact way that I then go across the top of the arms and the shoulders. I do exactly the same thing. Like I said, nothing special. And I'm just using that same yarn as what I've used to do these two pieces. So although they might not match perfectly along there in colour, obviously one's lighter, one's darker, it is the same yarn, so it will still look seamless once you've got it all together. So nothing too much to worry about. Okay, so just keep going with that all the way along until you've come to the top of that row, and I'll meet you there. just coming up to that end part now. I've got to make sure that those two ends meet nice and seamlessly. Now again, don't worry if you end up with any loose threads back there, because we will be adding to that with the hood, and we'll be going all the way around that connecting section, so don't worry too much if you've got any loose threads up there. The main point is just try and make sure that they connect flush, so just keep a good tight hold on that. Like I said, we'll be doing exactly the same backward and forward stitches when it comes to doing the top of the shoulders as well. So nothing too exciting. Like I said, it's the worst section in this bit for me, is attaching it all, but once it's done, it's worth it. And then I don't tie off right at that section there, because obviously we've got a little one there already. So just weave it through a little bit back down that row, and we'll just tie off there. Just pull up any yarn that you've got. Okay, that didn't come through quite as flush there as what I wanted, but it does happen. This yarn has a tendency to kind of feel a little bit like felt. So if you pull on it too tightly, or you're a little bit rough with it, it can sort of fray away like this. See, like that? So that is just through pulling through just a little bit too tightly. So you've got to be careful with yarns like this. The Signet Spirit has a tendency to do that as well. But I must admit, this one did take a little bit extra before it actually frayed apart. So I can't fault it really. So as you can see there, even though we've got different colours, it's nice and smooth, isn't it? So just turn your work now, keeping it inside out, but turn it so that you can see the top of your arm and shoulders, and pop your clips in so that it's nice and even. Just bear with me while I do mine. Okay, so I think you can see here, this is the section which we have just sewn together here, and this here is the top of the work, which is going to be your shoulder area. Now I think I explained earlier, what I do is I clip onto where that last stitch of the row was. So with me, I added the two, right, which is these two here. So I will then pull the top over to where those two rows begin, and that is where I sew from. So if you can see there now, the end of this section is lined up with that one, and on the other side it's exactly the same. So the row has begun there. Okay, so that then is the neck and shoulders on the back, and then once I've attached this all the way across, like I said, I attach directly from there all the way down to where your arm is here. Okay, and make sure you keep that nice and even as you can. But like I said, put your clips in there, and then what I will do is I will start here and work my way down, because I want it to be nice and tightly done there so that it won't come apart. And then once we've done that, then it gives me room for attaching a hood. So what I normally do then, when I'm wanting to do a hood, I will count down about 9 or 10. Okay, so say it was there, for instance, I would then put a stitch marker in there, and I would count down exactly the same and put a stitch marker in directly opposite, and then I start doing the granny stitch again all the way around and back down, and it just means that your hood starts from there and you get a nice size on it as it grows, and it'll grow up and up and up and up, almost like a rectangle, shall we say, until it's as tall as you think, and then we start to bring it in so that it just slightly curves at the back and you don't end up with that square pointy hood, which I hate. So we'll get to that in the end, so don't worry too much about it now. I just wanted to explain what that gap really for me is for, and it's for that reason. So again, get your needle and thread together, do what I've done if you can, clip them together so that your work doesn't start to get muddled as it grows. Because if you look here, I've got a clip here, and then I've got another one down there, and I've got one at the cuff area so that the work doesn't move and it doesn't end up out of line. You want it to be nice and seamless all the way down. So just do what I have done on the back side there along the top, and I will meet you when I've done my two and we've got our cardigan attached. So I'll meet you back there in a moment. Right guys, I've finished doing the sewing now, thankfully. So we've attached this side, which looks really nice and even. Can't see any different colours of the stitching going down there. I'll just show you the opposite side, because I've turned the work the right way around now. So like I said, if you keep it nice and even, you won't see any odd stitches. One thing I would like to just say though is use your yarn to stitch it. Don't pull it. Don't rely on your tension to close those pieces off, because all that'll do is make your work go like that. So don't use over excessive tension. Use your stitches to close it up properly, and that way then you'll get a nice even consistent close. See? You can't see where that has been attached, and it's just through taking your time and using your stitch with your yarn and keeping it nice and straight and not getting it all mixed up. Right, so that's that part done. So this is where we're going to end the video for this section, and keep tuned because the next section I will begin adding the length. Once I've done the length, I will then move on to the hood, and from there we will do both arms, bringing some of the length down, putting a nice even edge to it all, probably a fluffy edge, and then lastly it will be the edging. So bear with me, this will be in a series. I can't do it all at once because I would have to literally sit here for 40 odd hours, which can't do. So bear with me. Within the next few days I'll upload another video which will show you how to add your length, from there how to add your hood, from that one arms, and from arms your edging. So stay tuned and I'll keep working, and hopefully you'll stick with me right to the bitter end. Remember to press that like button, subscribe if you want to keep informed on when the next tutorial is uploaded. I really do appreciate it. I'm just a woman that likes to crochet, and I'm sharing what I make with you. I'm not getting paid for any of it, so I'd appreciate a like. Thanks guys.